Okay, assalamu alaikum. Hope you're all well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right. I've never actually, when I've gone on live for these things, I've never actually shared the link or anything on Twitter or any place like that. Maybe I should start doing that. Let's see, can I do it now quickly? How would I go about it? Just give me a second. I'm just going to be doing a repeat, basically, of the video which was removed by YouTube because of copyright. So I'm basically going to be redoing that because it's sort of like a sore thumb, or maybe I'm just being a bit OCD about it. I don't know, but it was one of the ones. We've got all of the episodes apart from this one, number 27, which got removed. That was the episode we had our brother, what's his name, Iron Man on, and he played some of the program that he was creating for Qur'an recitation, and because of that, it got flagged down, and copyright struck by, I don't know, some Muslim production company or something, which was like, hey, the recitation you're using is, we own the rights to it, basically. Right? It was recitation of some reciter or other, some Quran reciter. All right, so let's do this. I mean, it's towards the end, maybe it's going to be some of the things a lot of you already know, but I thought, it's definitely worthwhile revisiting these things. So let's get on with it. Assalamu alaikum, Adriana. Always good to see you. Okay, let me share my slides. There we go. Okay, let's adjust this. Put myself more out of the way. All right, okay, so I'm just going to go over this. Hopefully it won't be too long. I actually pulled out the notes which I have for this, for the live stream, which got deleted. And I looked it over, I added a few other things. I realized that when I started doing this, I was actually being a lot more briefer than which was always the intention, just to share a quick idea and then have people to come on and share any other insights they might have. So, going back to one of these early notes that I had made me kind of remember that. But I added a few other things to it because I guess I'm no longer being as brief. Okay, so Qur'an or Dhikr. Qur'an or Dhikr. So words which are often used interchangeably in traditional tafsir of the Qur'an is you have these words. You have Al-Qur'an, of course, comes up in the Qur'an. You have Al-Kitab, the Kitab or the book, okay, and you have the Dhikr, and also you have these in indefinite. You have these in indefinite. So you have Al-Qur'an, the Qur'an, and you have just Qur'an, and you have Al-Kitab, and you also have just Kitab. Okay, and you have al-zikr, the zikr, and you have just dhikr, right? And al-furqan, I think you just have in the definite article. I'll have to recheck that, but I don't think that it comes in the indefinite article. And in all of those cases, when you look at Muslim tafsir or translations of the Quran, they always just translate those to mean basically the Quran, what we call the Quran. Okay, But what is the difference between these terms Quranically? Why is one word used in a certain verse rather than one of the others? Right? What are their distinctions? Because it's important. You'll be able to sort of like see why which word is being used is actually very important, right? In each of its respective verses, it's being used for a reason rather than the other ones. The other ones wouldn't fit, okay, with what's intended. Here, though, in this presentation, I'm mostly going to be focusing on dhikr and what that means, right? And sort of how to identify what in the Quran is dhikr and what is not, basically, right? What could be considered not part of the dhikr. So what do I take dhikr to mean? I mean, when Allah chooses words to name things, I mean, the words being used, chosen to name something, fit. Okay, so the word dhikr literally just means remembrance, something which you remember. Dhikr, dhakara, remember something, right? So it's a remembrance. So what I take to be dhikr in the Quran are things in the Quran that are memories, right? Things that we're being reminded of, things that have been delivered again and again and again in history, right? So dhikr. Dhikr is those parts or teachings in the Quran, quote unquote, the text, revelation, okay, i.e. those verses which have universal messages and teachings, right? The things which have always been part of God's revelation to mankind, okay, and that's why they're called dhikr. We're being reminded of them, okay. Man forgets, Allah reminds. Man forgets, Allah reminds. Man forgets, Allah reminds. That's been the ongoing theme, right? Humanity forgets, falls into sin and debauchery and idolatry and stuff, and Allah sends messengers to remind, okay, to bring them back, to remind them. And so that key thing which is always being taught in the revelations, which all the messengers are preaching, that is dhikr. That is dhikr, right? And we have dhikr like that in the Quran. The whole of the Quran is not like that. Okay, the whole of the Quran is not that kind of dhikr, right? It's not what would have been preached by a prophet, one of the Israelite prophets, for example. I don't know, 5,000 years ago or however long. Okay, dhikr are those parts of the Quran which are universal, which have always been part of God's message to mankind. And it can also include the stories of the past, because they're dhikr as well, right? So we have the dhikr of ourselves in the Quran. Allah says in one verse, وَلَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا كِتَابًا فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ. We have sent down a scripture in which is your dhikr, right? Your dhikr. Now you can take that as being our admonition, the same idea, our remembrance for us, to remind us about our morality and ethics and things like that. But it can also mean to remind you about yourselves, where you are from. So the story of Adam and Eve, right? That is part of our dhikr. So stories of the past, of humanity's shared past, right? Especially in Adam and Eve, and perhaps in the story of Noah, right? This is also part of dhikr, because it's, again, we're reminding things about the past. Anything which can actually be called a dhikr, a remembrance in the Quran, you can characterize that as dhikr, right? Things which are forgotten, and now the Quran is reminding us of it, right? Whether the teachings which have always been taught, or even stories of the past, right? They can be included as dhikr. Okay, so let's see. Okay, hold on. I can actually edit this on the fly to make it look a bit better, because that looks a bit squashed. Okay, can I do it here? Will it update over here? Let me refresh. Check on the stream. All right, refresh that as well. Cool. All right, so an example of that is this verse: وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ وَقُرْآنٌ مُبِينٌ. So this is Surah Yasin, and it says, and we did not teach him, Muhammad, the Prophet, poetry. We didn't teach him poetry, and it isn't befitting for him to know poetry, right? It's not It's not for him. Like that, it's not befitting for him as a messenger from Allah to go around like a poet, right? What he has, it is but a dhikr and a clear Quran. And here they're both indefinite. So this verse shows that what Muhammad brought and recited, and that which was accused of being poetry, right? So we're talking about what they heard, right? What the Meccans heard, right? What he was reciting and what they called poetry, that thing which they call poetry, it is nothing but dhikr and a clear Quran, a clear recital or reading. Okay, so they're both in indefinite here, right? So it means it's a dhikr among others, right? In huwa illa dhikrun wa Qur'anun mubin. It is just a dhikr and a Qur'an mubin. Now, Qur'an here can, because it's indefinite, I don't take that to mean like the Qur'an, as in, the scripture itself, right? Because any other thing can be if you just take the word Qur'an itself in its meaning, a lot of other things can be a Qur'an, right? A recital, right? Or a reading, right? Among others. So it's a Qur'an, right? It's a Qur'an and it's a dhikr. Okay. So again, these are said as arguments against accusation of poetry. But the point I'm making here is this shows a separation, right? And that these are two things, right? It didn't say this is only a Qur'an, a clear Qur'an. It didn't say that. It didn't say this is only dhikr, right? It says this is a dhikr and a clear Qur'an. So there's a distinction being made between Qur'an and dhikr. Okay. Another example is here in the beginning of one of the surahs, right? And this time it's in the definite article, both of them. It says here Sad, right? In Surah Sad, the letter Sad, and then it's making the oath by the Quran possessing the dhikr, right? So in the translation doesn't have the, but in the Arabic they're both in a definite article. Wal Quran the dhikr, Sad wal Qur'ani the dhikr. So this verse telling us that the Quran has or possesses the dhikr, right? So it seems to have all of the dhikr that you need, right? The dhikr is in the Quran, right? In the Quran, the recitation, and of course the Quran here is talking about the specific definite, definite articles. So we're talking about one Quran, which is the Quran that the Prophet Muhammad received. Okay. So we're talking about the Quran specifically, and it possesses the dhikr. Okay, so this verse can tell us that the dhikr is a subset of the Quran. Okay, if the Quran possesses dhikr or has the dhikr, then it's a subset, right? Within the Quran, there's dhikr. Doesn't mean the whole of the Quran is dhikr, right? It means there's a subset in it. Okay, or if we take it more literally, as in the meaning of the Quran, which I take it to mean sort of like a true reading, a deeper reading. Okay, the reading, right? If you take Al-Quran to mean the reading, right? It means that a true, a deeper, thoughtful reading of the revelation has dhikr inside it. Okay, provides dhikr. So whichever part you read, if you read in it really deeply, inside you'll find dhikr there. So you can think of it this way. But the outer form of this verse is just saying the Quran, which was given to Muhammad, of course, possesses dhikr. So the dhikr is a subset of the Quran. And you can see that with a clearer example in other places. Here it shows, so a clear example that shows dhikr can be a separate subset of a revelation is the following. Okay, so in the Zabur, the Psalms which were given to King David, the Prophet David, and in them, what is it written? We are told in the Quran, in our revelation, that Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. And indeed, we decreed or inscribed, we wrote, we promised, can even be, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا, right? We decreed or inscribed or wrote in the Zabur after the dhikr. So after the remembrance, after the reminder, right? So again, that's part of what I mentioned before. The dhikr is the eternal message which is given to all messengers, all prophets. Okay, it's what mankind has always been reminded about. So here, where we are told that this dhikr existed in the Zabur given to Dawood alayhi salam, right? But after the dhikr was it's still inside the Zabur. We're still talking about in the Zabur, because it says we have written in the Zabur after the Dhikr. What did we write? That the earth shall be inherited by my righteous servants. أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. I think that's I'm not sure, but I don't study the Bible, but it isn't that the verse where the meek shall inherit the earth or something like that, right? So it's obviously been a little bit corrupted, because we trust the Quran more. It also says the salihun, not just the meek, right, will inherit the earth. The salihun shall inherit the earth. Okay, the righteous. In any case, that part that Allah wrote in the Zabur, inscribed or decreed or promised in the Zabur, that the earth shall be inherited by the righteous servants, that isn't the dhikr. Okay, that's something after the dhikr. Okay, and it's clear why it isn't dhikr, right? It isn't something which is a remembrance, it isn't a reminder, right? It isn't something which is like a message which every prophet must have told his people, right? No, it's a prophecy, right? It can't be a dhikr, it can't be a reminder, a remembrance. Okay, it's a prophecy which is going to be fulfilled, something yet to happen, and so it cannot fall under the title of dhikr, a remembrance, a reminder. It isn't a remembrance, a reminder. It's something about the future. Okay, so that shows you clearly again that there's this distinction between dhikr within scripture. Okay, there's a distinction with respect to dhikr in scripture. Which when you understand that, it takes you back to the idea that Allah is going to preserve the Qur'an, as they say. He didn't say that, of course. The verse says, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." We indeed send down the dhikr, and we are going to preserve it. So Allah is promising to preserve the dhikr. Well, and it's clear why it should be the dhikr only which needs to be preserved, because that's the universal part of the message, right? It's the important, the key, the kernel of the message, the thing which is repeated throughout the ages. And so it's going to be the thing which is needed for all ages to the future, right? So that is the part which has to be preserved, right? The rest doesn't have to be preserved, okay? The rest can have its own time and place function. But the dhikr is something eternal, right? It was something which is repeated all the way in the past, and so we need it all the way in the future as well. And so Allah promised to preserve the dhikr. And it was also there among other people as well, right? So, when the Quran tells us to ask the people of dhikr, if you don't know, because the dhikr that was sent down to them was also preserved. I mean, that verse is universal. Allah sent down the dhikr and He is going to preserve it. That's also true for the other scriptures, for the previous revelations. Okay, so it's always preserved. Okay, but it ends up being sort of like in just in the possession of only a few. Right? There's Ahl al-Dhikr, and the rest of mankind have forgotten. Right? In any case, let's move on. Another example that we have in our own Quran, so a parallel example I would like to say, is in Surah Al-Muzammil. So in Surah Al-Muzammil, there's a verse which is sort of lodged at the end of the surah, right? And academics sometimes look at this verse and say, it isn't part of the original revelation of the surah. And even in the traditional accounts, we have that this verse came much later, right? So Surah Al-Muzammil is considered a very early surah, either the second surah, right? Generally, sometimes second or third, very early, one of the first 5 surahs to be revealed, the beginning of it, certainly, right? But we also, I know some Quranists don't accept this, but the idea that some of their verses were revealed later than others, right? So the last verse in this surah seems to have been revealed much later, right? After the Prophet had started, praying a lot, right, in the night. We're going to read that in a minute, but the point is that this surah, right from the beginning, continues on until you get to this verse, which says, "Inna hadhihi tadhkira." And the format in here is a bit weird, but it says, "In hadhihi tadhkira, faman sha'a ittakhadha ila rabbihi sabila." Truly, this is a piece of dhikr, a bit of dhikr, right? For whoever would take a path to his Lord, right? So, what does that mean? The dhikr in the surah ended at this verse. Okay, so the surah up to this point, up to verse 19, is dhikr, is part of the dhikr, right? So it's given dhikr. You can look at it all as sort of like a piece of dhikr, all right? But the next verse, you could say is not part of dhikr. It's something else. Okay, and you can see why it isn't. What is it about? It's basically about the Prophet praying at night and others praying with him. So the next verse is very specific to the Prophet, and it's about his night prayers and those among the Sahaba who tried to emulate him, and it's giving concessions to them. You don't have to pray that much. You can recite just part of the Quran, etc. Okay, so that part of the surah, that final verse, is not part of dhikr. So let's just have a read of it, and you'll see why. It says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه. Indeed, your Lord, Muhammad, so it's in the first person here, speaking directly to the Prophet, knows that you stand in prayer almost 2/3 of the night, or half of it, or a third of it, okay, and so on. And so do a group of those with you. Okay, وَطَائِفَةٌ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ مَعَكَ. So automatically you can see this is something very specific, right? It's not part of sort of like the universal teaching of dhikr, which was sent to all prophets. No, it's just it's looking at the Prophet and how he's praying, and how the people around him are struggling to keep up, and Allah's looking at them and is trying to tell him sort of like, it's okay, calm down, you don't have to try to emulate him so much. And he says, and Allah determines the extent of the night and the day, right? Wallahu yuqaddiru al-layla wa an-nahar. And this tells you something about the idea of qadr, right? People say that qadr, the predestination or preordainment and stuff like that, as in the Quran, isn't, okay? The idea of qadr in the Quran is just about that, about the measure. Like Allah measures the night and the day. Wallahu yuqaddiru al-layl wa an-nahar, right? And Allah determines the extent of the night and the day. He has known that you Muslims, the Sahaba, will not be able to do it, and has turned to you in forgiveness. So recite what is easy for you of the Quran. He knows that there will be among you those who are ill, and others traveling throughout the land and seeking of the bounty of Allah, and others fighting for the cause of Allah. So recite what is easy from it. Okay, so that section there, you can't really call that dhikr, right? It isn't a remembrance. Now, of course, there's still a teaching here which you could say, okay, you can extrapolate from it, a lot of important teachings and stuff. But when we're talking about the dhikr for mankind, okay, this isn't part of it. This isn't really part of a dhikr for mankind. Okay, and now, of course, that doesn't mean that even if there's a section or a verse that isn't on the whole a dhikr in its purpose, that it doesn't, contain little bits of dhikr inside it. The Quran seems to fuse that a little bit, right? You have a little bit of dhikr peppered inside it, So even in the verses, for example, of inheritance, right? The verse will end and Allah is, forgiven, merciful, or wise, and wise in judgment, mighty. That's part of dhikr as well. Those recollections of God's attributes, right? They're part of dhikr, and you can find them sometimes in verses which aren't verses of dhikr, but are verses of kitab or prescriptions. Okay, but in this verse, for example, at the end of it, after saying this part, which you wouldn't say is part of dhikr, you have what? You have وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقْرِضُوا اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِندَ اللَّهِ هُوَ خَيْرٌ وَأَعْظَمُ أَجْرًا وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So this part is still this very end part. You can consider that to be part of dhikr, because it's again those universal things: establish prayer, give zakat, and if you give a loan to Allah, give him a goodly loan, and whatever good you put forward, you'll find it with Allah. It is better for you in reward, etc. And seek the forgiveness of Allah. Allah is forgiving, merciful. So this is part of dhikr, right? So you can start to identify from the clues in the Quran itself which verses or which parts are dhikr and which are not. In this surah, it kind of announces it, right? It says, "Inna hadhihi tadhkira faman sha'a ittakhadha ila rabbihi sabila." This is a dhikr, right? So whoever wants, let him seek a path to his Lord. So if it's saying this is a dhikr, and then the surah continues on, then it's making that distinction that what came before is dhikr, and what came after might not be, right? Is not, right? But that doesn't mean you blind yourself to to any bits of dhikr which are there still, right? So if you look again, this this last verse in Surah Al-Muzammil. This is all one verse, by the way. This part and this part, it's all one verse. Okay, it's clear that this beginning of the verse isn't dhikr, but at the end you have a bit of dhikr added towards it. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So what about, you can even look at it in the Quran. You have whole surahs which don't have dhikr, right, which are not surahs of dhikr. Okay, in a similar way, you can now look at other verses and even whole surahs, and with equal justification, say that they are not part of the dhikr, right? So Surah Al-Duha, Surah Al-Kawthar, Surah Quraysh, Surah Al-Lahab. Okay, these sorts of time and place specific, surahs and verses, you can't consider them really part of the universal dhikr, right? So if you ask yourself, what is Surah Quraysh is dhikr of? Okay, you can't get an answer to that because it's not a dhikr of anything really, right? It isn't a reminder of anything. Okay, how is it a dhikr to the worlds? It isn't, right? Surah Quraysh, unless you read it in a very sort of deep way, mystic way. Like for example, if you the tafsir of Ibn Arabi, the Sufi Ibn Arabi has a lot of interesting things to say about Surah Quraysh, and Surah Al-Fil, which comes right after it, which is also again, maybe that one you could think of it as a dhikr in terms of a reminder of something that happened in the past, right? In that sort of sense, as a story. But he does something very interesting with those two surahs, right? He takes them as allegories for the heart, and the elephant is shaitan, right? And the Kaaba is the heart, and he makes this allegorical thing with respect to it. And that way you can, right? You can say it's a dhikr, right? Because when you look at it deeply, when you read deeply, you can find dhikr even in maybe even in verses which aren't primarily that. Okay, so but the main point stands that a surah like Surah Quraysh or Surah Al-Kawthar, Surah Al-Kawthar is just basically Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shanika huwal abtar, right? We have given you, O Muhammad, the Kawthar, so pray to your Lord and sacrifice. The one who sort of like ridicules you or abuses you, he is the one who is cut off. Okay, that's the whole surah. Okay, that is very specific to the Prophet. So is Surah Al-Duha, right? It's very specific, just addressing the Prophet only. Okay, you can't really call those dhikr. So getting back to the first thing that I was saying, the distinctions between the words, right? So let me just run down my conclusions generally about this. So Al-Qur'an, what is Al-Qur'an? When the Qur'an says that, of course, you can say it means the scripture that was given to Muhammad, right? But what would I say it is, if you were talking about it as a distinctive word and meaning different from the others? In this case, Al-Qur'an, I would say, is the aspect that requires actual thoughtful reading, right, and purity to access. And I take this from Surah Al-Waqi'ah, in huwa illa Qur'anun Kareem fi kitabin maknoon, right? That it's a Qur'an Kareem, it's a noble Qur'an, fi kitab maknoon, in the book, right, hidden. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. You can't reach it, intellectually touch it, except the pure, right? None can touch it except the pure. So that tells me it's sort of like the Quran is sort of like the true reading of the book, right? A deeper reading of it. Just like when you read, the way we study poetry in school or something, right? You read it, you spend like a month or something reading a poem and studying it in school, right? And discussing the different themes, this, that, and the other. Okay, that sort of reading of something of it is the Quran, right? The Quran is the reading, okay, real reading. Okay, Al-Kitab is the laws, the prescriptions, the rules, right? So when you have the verse, the Prophet is to teach them Al-Kitab and Hikmah, right? Teach them the book and the wisdom. The book here is really the prescriptions, okay, the laws, right? And you have that all over the Quran. It says, Kutiba alaykum this, Kutiba alaykum that. This has been prescribed to you. This has been prescribed to you. It's the things which Allah is prescribing, okay? Those verses are kitab. So, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam, right? Kama kutiba ala alladhina min قبلكم. Fasting is prescribed, kutiba, kitab, for you, just as it was prescribed to those before you. And also kutiba alaykum al-qital, fighting is prescribed for you, right? And those sort of things, right? Kutiba alaykum al-qisas fil qatla, just reproduction, what's it called? Qisas, forget an English word, what is it? Qisas, retribution, right? Just retribution is prescribed for you, etc. Those are kitab. Al-Furqan, when the Quran talks about Al-Furqan, it's about those parts which can be used as a criterion, okay, to distinguish, the right from the wrong. Okay, so for example, the arguments that the Quran gives, okay, there can be a Furqan, right? When it starts to discuss, like that Socratic dialogue with the opponents in the Quran, right? When it tells them, Man khalaqa as-samawat, who is the one who created the heavens and the earth? If and they say Allah, and it says, okay, then how are you deluded, right? These kind of arguments in the Quran, these are Furqan, right? They help to distinguish the truth from the falsehood, okay? The argument that, that Jesus and Mary both ate food, right? That is part of the Furqan, right? It says, look how we make things clear to them, right? How we clearly distinguish things, and look how they turn away, right? So that's part of the Furqan. Those aspects of the revelation are part of the Furqan. And by the way, I didn't write it here, but the revelation in total, I would call it, the word used for the actual revelation in total is al-tanzil, the revelation, right? It's just the words match what they are, essentially. Al-tanzil, right? Al-tanzil, the revelation, is the thing that came down, okay? The whole thing that came down, okay? A true reading of it is Al-Quran. The prescriptions, the laws inside of it are Al-Kitab. The arguments, the parts of it which can be used to distinguish the truth from the falsehood, right? Those are Al-Furqan and Al-Dhikr. Al-Dhikr is the universal moral teachings, or the parts of it which are a reminder. So what we are being reminded of. Tawheed, of course, that Allah is one, His attributes, to, be honest, don't cheat, don't steal, don't kill, those are don't oppress, right? All of those things are part of dhikr, including also a reminder of heaven and hell, right? So that's part of dhikr as well, right? That there's going to be judgment day, okay? All of that is part of dhikr. Okay, last thing I'd like to mention, actually, let me check the time. I don't know if there's something I just sort of stuck on at the end. Why not? Let's just talk about it quickly. Is, of course, the use of dhikr here, which is used by people generally to sort of like shoot down the idea of the relying on the Quran alone, right? So you've got this verse, which of course has a previous verse leading onto it, but the part that they refer to is this part, which is وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And we revealed to you, O Muhammad, the message. Here they put as the message, of course, that's again the dhikr, right? That you may make clear to the people what was sent down to them, and that they might give thought. So that the argument is, we have sent down the Quran to you so that you can explain to people the Quran that was sent down to them. Okay, that's basically what they're saying. And the Prophet's job is to explain the Quran, right? So we sent down the Quran. They would make this interchangeable with the Quran, the Tanzil. We sent down the Quran so that you may explain to mankind what was sent down to them. Right, so we sent to you the Quran so that you will then explain to everybody this thing that we sent down to you. Okay, that's the idea. So the idea is that the Prophet is supposed to explain the Quran, which of course he never did. Right, we don't have any, or if he did, it's lost. Right, we don't have any, even a fraction of the verses in the Quran being explained by the Prophet at all. Okay. But of course, the real idea of this is that the Prophet is going to use the Quran, which has its dhikr. He's going to use the dhikr in the Quran, right? And the dhikr which was sent down to him to explain to mankind everything else which had been sent to them before, previously, okay, which has now been corrupted, because that's what happens, right? Allah sends down the dhikr, right, and it gets corrupted or lost, and then he sends down dhikr again, right, which does what? And the messenger to whom he sends the dhikr again does what? He explains to them all the things that had been revealed before, right? Everything which had been before is made clear, right? It's made clear. So that tells you that. In the same surah we have يوم نبعث في كل أمة شهيدا عليهم من أنفسهم وجئنا بك شهيدا على هؤلاء. Right, so it says here, and we mention the day when we will resurrect every among every nation a witness over them from themselves, and we will bring you, O Muhammad, as a witness over your nation. And then it says what? This is in the same surah, of course, the same surah. And we have sent down to you the book as clarification, right? So this tells you that وَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, explaining everything. So again, the Prophet here isn't explaining what was sent down to him. He's using what was sent down to him to explain to others what was sent down to them. Okay, we sent down to you the dhikr so that you may explain to mankind and nas, the rest of mankind, right, everything that was sent down to them previously. All right, in the Torah, in the Zabur, in the Injil, right. Some of that needs to be clarified, right? It has to be clarified. لِتُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. And to bayin, again, doesn't even mean clarify, really. To bayin means to make something more apparent, make it mubin, make it clearer, right? So the dhikr that the Prophet has, he's going to use that to make what they have, what was sent down to them in the Zabur, the Torah, the Injil, to make that even clearer, to make the truth in it clearer or more bayin, more apparent than the falsehood which has been mixed with it. Okay, لِتُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ ما نزل إليهم. And again, so أنزلنا إلى عليك الكتاب تبيانا لكل شيء وهدى ورحمة وبشرى للمسلمين. And good tidings for the Muslims, all the Muslims. Muslims here, of course, can mean Muslim Jews, Muslim Christians, Muslim Muhammadans, right? It's talking about all of that. It's not talking about just the religion. And again, in the same surah, and this is even before this verse, you have this: تالله لقد أرسلنا إلى أمم من قبلك فزين لهم الشيطان أعمالهم فهو وليهم اليوم ولهم عذاب أليم. And by Allah, we did certainly send messengers to nations before you, right? But what happened? But Satan made their deeds attractive to them, right? So of course that involved corrupting what was sent to them, right? And he is their ally today, and they will have a painful punishment. And we have not revealed to you the book except for you to make clear to them what wherein they have differed, and as guidance and mercy for those who believe. So again, it's telling us very clearly here that what was sent to the Prophet, okay, وَمَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لِتُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ, except for you to make clear for them. Who are them? Who are them? It's the people before us. Okay, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَى أُمَمٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ, we have sent to people, to nations before you. Okay, the Prophet is to use the revelation, the kitab, the dhikr, the Qur'an, to make clear to those before, okay, those nations before who were corrupted by shaitan, who got corrupted by shaitan. It isn't to explain the Qur'an. It isn't for the Prophet. He's been sent down the revelation and he has to explain that revelation. No, again, in this same surah, right? The kitab itself is already tibyan li kulli shay. It's already a clarification for everything. So there's, I know this is sort of like Quranism 101 for many of you, but it bears repeating, especially as, again, I'm just repeating, redoing this live stream because it was deleted. And that's the end of this presentation. All right, somebody said sound. I hope I wasn't just talking to myself here. Don't think so. Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're well. Right, I don't have anybody backstage, so if nobody comes on, will quit a little bit early. But anybody who wants to come on and join me, you're more than welcome. The link is in the description. Especially if you have something to share, or if you have any thoughts about what I've presented here, you're more than welcome to come on. But that's the end of the presentation as is. Who is the true Messiah? Asks, are you Sunni? No, I mean, I'm from a Sunni background, but I suppose you could say I've moved on from Sunni, from the Sunni or sectarian groupings. If you're going to ask about that in terms of like the political stuff about what happened after the Prophet, I think it's absolutely clear that the Prophet nominated Ali to be his successor. Okay, even though it took a while to get to that, or to admit it, being from my Sunni background, but that's actually what it is. But no, I'm more what you'd call Qur'an centric. So I'm trying to, that the idea that we Muslims we would agree and we would accept, and we see very easily that all the other religions, that the Christianity of today isn't the Christianity of Jesus, right? That the Judaism of today isn't the Judaism of Jesus, right? And we would point to the very scripture, the words of Musa in the scripture would point to the words of Jesus in the Gospels to show that, right? So in the same way, we're kind of trying to reevaluate Islam, because we see in the same vein that the Muslims have strayed from the Quran and from the original Islam of the Prophet, and so we're trying to recalibrate, bring that back through the Quran. Yes, I do. You're talking about the what our Southeast Asian brothers call Durood Sharif, yes? The salawat on the Prophet. Yeah, I do. I mean, I pray the traditional prayer. Okay, I pray the traditional 5 times a day, daily prayer. I'm just not as dogmatic as I used to be in terms of like the timings and not joining them. I join them freely whenever I need to, which is it's not, to be honest, not that very big departure from my background anyway, which is Maliki. In the Maliki fiqh, you can combine Dhuhr and Asr very easily with, just if it's going to make your day easier, you can do it. So I do that. But yes, I pray the traditional prayer, including the salawat on the Prophet, which is just a prayer on him. I mean, some Quranists have made that into a huge deal, like you're praying to the Prophet. When you say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, right? Or Allah send blessings on Muhammad. No, you're just invoking blessings on him, right? Well, you can try, but we'd have to agree on what shirk is, and I'm guessing we probably wouldn't. Feel free to come on, right? I've got somebody in backstage now, which I want to bring on. Our friend Mujid Perfect Dawah. So I'm going to bring him on. But you're welcome to do that. If you don't want to come on to the live stream, you can do it in the comment section of this video when it goes live. You can reach out to me on Twitter. I used to be a lot more active on Reddit. I need to get back to that, to be honest. I've let Twitter sort of like pull me too far deep, I think, especially because of the the genocide in Gaza and these things. It's been a very hard couple of years. Muji, I'm going to bring you on, okay?
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. How have you been?
Alhamdulillah.
Let me see. Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, alhamdulillah. It was a very long time ago. We were talking.
Yes. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah. Actually, I had a live, so I finished it a little bit earlier. So I saw that you are live. So I was thinking that now is a very good time to join and talk.
Yes. It's always good to hear from you. How have you been anyway?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Yeah, I had some. Do you know Hourglass? He has
Sorry,
been
speak
joining
up.
Hourglass.
Hourglass.
Yeah, there is a brother. He has been joining your channel as well. Yeah,
Hourglass. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
Hourglass. Yes,
yes.
Miss K is writing as well. Hourglass
Hmm.
is not coming to debate because yeah, because it was like this 2 weeks ago, and he was talking to me on my line, and then there was somebody who asked me talk to Big Nose of London. Big Nose of London is a guy who's going to Speaker's Corner, and he requested very much that please talk to him, and I wanted to see who is this guy. So after 1 hour, I finished and went to his channel. I was talking to Hourglass, but he wasn't you know satisfied that I want to finish the. He didn't like that I want to finish the live and go and talk to that big nose. So I didn't listen to him. And then last week he was very angry. He started to came up and talked about stoning, about Prophet Muhammad married Aisha at 9, things like this. And I debated him a little bit, and I realized that he's just saying nonsense. Okay, and I told him that no, I'm not going to debate you anymore. So, and he wanted to call in this today, and I didn't let him. I said, if you would like, you can come here and talk to me in where Brother Khaled also listening, okay? Not just me and you, okay? Because
Oh, okay.
he doesn't have any knowledge of anything, He just, like a parrot, unfortunately, he just repeat what others say, understand? And when you
Okay.
ask a question, he doesn't know the answer. He just repeat whatever the so-called scholars have told him, about stoning and killing apostate, all these things. And I asked him to join, but I don't think he will join here and debate. And then I want to say something about this true Messiah that said he want to prove that praying or giving what is that taslim to
The taslim. So
yeah
he means
yeah
the saying assalamu ala nabi and the prophet, or assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi.
yeah
Um,
he want to say that it is shirk. Yeah, he want to prove. And I always actually point to that video you made, brother Khaled. Was a nice video about shirk. That shirk is not these things that you even believe in somebody's God or son of God. Shirk is obeying somebody other than God. And that was
mm,
very strong that, obeying Prophet Muhammad, obeying Jesus is not shirk, okay? Obeying my boss is not shirk. You remember you were doing that video.
yeah, yeah,
Obeying
yeah.
somebody guiding you to bad deeds, that's shirk, okay?
Mm,
If my boss tell me to go and kill somebody, that's shirk. If my boss tell me go and take care of a child, that's not shirk. Okay? So
yeah,
this,
yeah.
this is shirk.
Yeah, I mean, I said to him just a minute ago that
Mhm.
um, would probably not agree
Yeah.
on our definition of shirk, which is going to be the prerequisite before we can even discuss if the
Mhm.
taslim is shirk or not, right?
Yeah.
So that would just be
Mhm.
the issue there. Let me just see, you wrote here something. It's because you expect a response when you greet him. Well, no, I mean, but even if you expect a response when you greet him, why is that? Why is that shirk?
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, again, you see, the issue of this, my friend, is that this is really, it comes from the it's basically a remnant of, the Salafi Wahhabi push, right? There was a time I remember where everything was shirk, 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 shirk. And I think some of the Quran, it's really kept that. I remember one time in a mosque this was in Saudi, right? So I had like one of those the prayer beads, right? So after the prayer, I used the rosary, the Muslim rosary, the prayer beads. I used that to do tasbih, right? And the imam he stormed at me. Don't you know this is shirk? This is. I was like, wow. Yeah, like he had to give me a huge lecture about why using the prayer beads is shirk,
Mhm.
right? Um, Another time, similar sort of situation. I was in a mosque, and again prayer beads, right? So I used this prayer beads, and I had put like some itr on the prayer beads, right? So afterwards, I just smelled them, yeah, because the itr, the perfume smelled good. So I smelled them afterwards, and he thought I kissed them, right? So somebody some other person who was praying, not the imam this time, but somebody was praying in the mosque as well, saw me, and he thought I kissed them, and he came and told me how it's shirk to kiss the prayer beads. Okay, and first of all, I wasn't kissing them, right? I was just, it's got itr on them, and the funny thing is, I tried to like say, hey, have a smell of them. It's really nice itr, and he sort of like he like almost jumped out of his skin, like he was scared, like it was some voodoo magic or something, right? He got scared. Like, but it's a superstition, right? So I think a lot of the fear that a lot of Muslims have with respect to shirk is superstition. It's just a superstitious fear of shirk, right? It isn't normal. It's like an OCD superstitious idea, right? If you expect a response, okay, from the Prophet, right? Because you believe that people in the spirit realm can hear you, right? How is that shirk? Okay, it doesn't make it shirk at all, right?
I believe,
It
brother.
doesn't even make it that you're associating an attribute. The other idea that they call shirk. Shirk is about associating somebody with Allah or attributes, giving some of the attributes of Allah to creation. They call that shirk. That isn't shirk either, right? Giving the attributes of Allah to creation, thinking that this or that isn't shirk either, right? But let's say you believe that the Prophet can hear you or something like that, right? That is an attribute of Allah, right? I mean, Allah hears everything in the whole universe, right? That's not the same thing, right? I mean, you're bringing the Allah's attribute down. You're downgrading it very, very low, right? If all it takes for you to say that somebody has the same attribute as Allah, the attribute of hearing, is that they can hear you when you say taslim, right? That's it, right? No, Allah's hearing is far above that, right? It's
Can
far
I say,
above that.
yeah, but Khalid, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that harming yourself and harming others is shirk, because you go out of Allah's command. Because Allah wants that people take care of each other, they love one another, they have a better life in this world. So this is all He wants.
Well, I wouldn't.
So let me please explain. That's why I believe, and there are scholars that I know that they believe also that chapter 49, for example, 49:13, when Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind. Allah is talking about entire mankind. The best of you in the sight of Allah is the one with the most taqwa. And I run the taqwa as, I interpret it as the sacrification. The more you sacrifice, the better you are in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doesn't matter what you believe, because I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to go far away from our animal nature, selfishness, and sacrifice, take care of one another, give charity out of, when we love our wealth, to give it away. That's the sacrifice. Take care of orphans. All
Yeah.
these.
I understand, but I just want to say this quick point, because I think we have to be careful not going into the same basically problem as this idea of so many things are shirk, right? So what's happening, I think, like what you're saying now, is that now I think shirk is harming yourself. That's shirk. No, this is again the same problem as saying, as the other half, as the other side, where saying that even drinking Zamzam water is shirk, or doing this or that is shirk, right? It's not that you just divide everything into good and bad, and everything which you think is good is not shirk, and everything which you think is bad is shirk, right? This is what I see happening. That we're getting, it's diluting the concept, right? Harming yourself isn't shirk, right? Shirk, in very plain terms, I mean, it says in the Quran, right? من كان يرجو لقاء ربه فلا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. Right? And if you look throughout the Quran, shirk is always mentioned when there's ibadah.
Yes.
Right? There has to be ibadah to others with Allah. It's not even just ibadah to others, because there's also يعبدون من دون الله. They are in ibadah to other than Allah completely. That is not shirk. Right? If you are in ibadah to, I don't know, Zeus or this or the other, and that's it, that's not shirk either. Right?
I understand.
It's only shirk when you're in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah too. Right? So all of the mushrikeen in the Quran, they were in ibadah to Allah as well. They were in ibadah to Allah. Right? But the problem was they were in ibadah to other than Allah as well. Right? They shared out their devotion to others. Okay, and again, also shirk isn't really just about, yes, it's about, you know, obeying and stuff, but it isn't just that, right? It's the mentality of the abd, of the person who is willingly being in servitude to somebody else, reverence. So it's like obeying others with reverence, with, you know, devotion, right?
Yeah, but obeying,
that sort of stuff, okay, that's where it comes down to.
Yeah, brother. But obeying, again, if you obey someone who is guiding you to good deeds, you know, like for example, obeying the law of the country I'm living in, like Sweden. Yeah, I obey the laws of Sweden. That's
okay. Let me give you an example, because even that is not. Yeah, even that is not okay. Yes, you're right, but it's the problem here is that nothing is being. This is why we're in this world as well. We're going to be tested. Is that shirk or isn't shirk? So if you obey the laws of your land, you say, I'm going to obey the laws of my land. Okay, you can have two different types of people who obey the laws of all laws of land, the good things. You can have two types of people who will obey commands like, you know, don't kill, give in charity. Right? Let's say give in charity. That's a good thing. So you can have two different types of people who will obey a command which says give in charity. One of them can be a mushrik still, and the other one cannot, might not be. How can you tell the difference? The difference comes about is when the person who is commanding you to give in charity, right? So person A gets commanded by person X to give in charity, okay? And person A does it, okay? That's fine. That's not, so far you can't see if there's shirk there or not, right? Okay. But if then if then person X commands person A to kill somebody, right? Yeah. And then that person now refuses. Now you see that this person, his obedience is not out of just pure reverence. It's not slavehood. There's no ibadah, right? There's no ibadah. So when the person obeyed him, when he told him give in charity, and he obeyed him, he didn't do it out of ibadah, out of servitude, out of a slavehood, out of a reverence towards him, right? He didn't do it. He did it because he said, yes, I will do it. It's a good deed and you're commanding me. Okay, I will do it, right? But when the command came to do something evil, he refused, which shows that he's not an abd, he's not a slave, right? He has his own independence. He said, no, I'm a human being. I will not worship you in this. Okay. But then you can have person B, okay, who person X can command him 1,000 times or on 1,000 different good issues, and he will do it. But then if that one time person X commanding him to do something evil and he still does it, it shows that all of the rest of the times it's still shirk, because he's doing them. Even then, he could be doing it out of servitude. All those good deeds he didn't do it out of wanting to do it. He did it out of servitude, out of ibadah. It shows when he got commanded to do something evil and he did it. So that means he did, all those other times he was doing good. Was he really doing good, or was he doing it out of ibadah to this person X? Okay, we have to be clear about what shirk is. And that's why I say you cannot understand shirk without understanding ibadah.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know.
You have to really understand what ibadah is. Right? Before you can.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Quran also says, that they have taken the priests and rabbis, you know.
It's arbab.
Yes, they ibadah as they beside God. They just follow them blindly, and that's, I always say that it's not only about them. It's about Muslims who just take Bukhari and the Muslim and others as their
of course,
as their lords. They say anything Quran is wrong. They are right. Like where, killing apostate. When you say Quran say La ikraha fi din, they change Quran's words and say no, Quran doesn't say about Muslims. It says about non-Muslims. They change even Quran's words to match with Bukhari. Yeah, that's exactly. You're right. The shirk is that when you do something bad, and yes, even those good deeds you do, if you do it without understanding, without willingness, you just do it because that person tells you, that's like shirk as well. Yes, that you don't.
The shirk is your ibadah, your servitude, your demeaning of yourself,
Yeah.
right, to others, as you should only demean yourself to Allah.
Yeah.
Right?
But
So you're demeaning yourself to others, you're making yourself a slave to others. You're looking at some others with reverence and adoration and all of that, and being just, subservient to them and all of that, that sort of attitude of slavehood, of that positive slavehood that you should have towards Allah only. You give some of that to other than Allah. You make others a partner in that. No, that reverence of obedience, of slavehood, of submission, that part of you, which is that, okay, that every human being has, because Allah created us with that. مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. The man and jinn were only created to have ibadah. This is a part of our nature, this ibadah, right?
Yes.
Part of our nature. And if you share that out between Allah and others, that's what makes you a mushrik, right? That's shirk. Sharing that out, making others a partner in that, making Allah is you obey Allah, you will listen to Him, you'll do it, but you also obey Allah other than Him. You'll give that same sense of reverence, of servitude, of slavehood to other than Allah as well, right? And if you're not even giving it to Allah at all, then you're not a mushrik as well, right? So if Allah's not in the equation at all, right? So you give it completely to other than Allah, there also you're not a mushrik. There also you're not a mushrik, because in fact, if you're in ibadah just to one thing or one person, right? You cannot be a mushrik, because your ibadah is to one person, one person, right? You're not a mushrik there, right? That doesn't mean you're off scot free or anything. But the problem with the why that person is better, the person who's in complete ibadah to other than Allah is better than the mushrik. Why? Because the person who is in ibadah to other than Allah, right? He might not know, right? He might not know what Allah commands, what Allah shows. He doesn't know this. But the other person who's in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah, he knows who Allah is. That's why he's in ibadah to Allah as well. He knows Allah's rights. He knows Allah's might. That He's the commands to goodness, etc. Right? So, okay, if you know all of this, how is it that you can give part of yourself, part of your slavehood, to other than Him? Right? How can you divide yourself like that? The other person who's given himself totally to this, to this other god, this idol, or this person, that person is not a mushrik, and this person could end up turning, right? If you approached him correctly, or he could end up turning, giving all of that ibadah to Allah alone, right? So you can take because he has that unity in himself of servitude to one person, right? It's just the wrong person. But the person who is a mushrik, he's completely ripped inside. What Allah created inside him, this unity of ibadah, he's divided that up. He's broken that up, right? He's broken. That's why you have that. I did the stream about the mushrik, which Allah talks about, gives the example of the mushrik. That he's like somebody who's fallen from the sky, and then birds snatch at him, pulled this way and that way, because it gets imagine that somebody's falling down from the sky and these birds are pecking at him, ripping him apart into pieces, right? His nature is being cut up. The mushrik's nature is cut up between all of these masters, right? And but the person who's only in ibadah to other than Allah, one person, one other idol, that person at least has that unity himself. He has not destroyed that part of his humanity in terms of that he is a person of ibadah to one being. That is still there. It's just to the wrong being. Okay, and it can be moved to being towards Allah alone. But the person who's in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah, and this person, that person, and this sheikh, and this and that, this person has really like broken themselves into parts inside. Very difficult to put that person back together, right? Anyway, so
yeah, Biske asked in the chat, Mujib, how do you define what's harmful and what's not? I believe that as Jesus also said, love your others as you love yourself, or neighbors as you love yourself. So you don't like to, the way you don't like to be treated, so don't treat people that way. You don't like that somebody attack you, harm you, kill you, or whatever. So don't do this to others as well. So like this, maybe it's easy to, and we are actually, I believe that we are intelligent enough to understand what is right and what is wrong. For me, many of them comes also from the religion, okay, which I have learned about God's commands, and many of them out of experience, for example. And then another thing is that you were pointing. I want to say that, for example, I'm fighting against a regime and in my country, and I follow an organization, and that organization tells me tomorrow, or like today, for example, we had a demonstration. Come this place, we are going to demonstrate against the regime, or next month we are going there to do demonstration, and so on. So I follow them and I listen to them, but it is not like, so it is not shirk, because I do it because I know they are right. Okay, so this cannot be shirk, because I want to fight for freedom of my people, and I believe that this organization is doing the right thing. I might be wrong also, yes, definitely, but I don't do it because I know that they are wrong, and I do it. I know, I believe that they are right. That's why I do. So I don't think that even if I'm wrong, that could be shirk, because I do something out of mistake. I might do something out of mistake or misunderstanding. It becomes wrong later. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says also in the Quran that I do not take you responsible for your, how is it that your undeliberate oaths, yeah? The verse says, but I will take you account for your, so yeah, broken oaths that you know it. I don't remember the exact words of the verse, yeah. So if you by mistake you do something wrong, he's not going to take you account for that. But if you know that it's wrong and you do it, that's shirk, that's bad, that's that's punishable, yeah. But not something that you don't know. You think that this is the right thing that you do.
Okay, this
Yes.
person is asking, does magic and evil eye exist in the Quran? So yeah, I mean, it does. The Quran does mention about sihr, and that some were taught sihr, that the two angels taught some people sihr in Babylon, right? But most of the stuff that people attribute to evil eye and magic, most of it isn't. It's just sort of like superstition and stuff like that. But I think it does. I mean, the evil eye thing is a very interesting thing. I actually think they call it magic, but it's got nothing to do with the actual magic which is mentioned in the Quran. The thing about the evil eye, and it has its counterpart as well, which is the good eye, right? So it exists in like the Sufi culture and stuff, that that a pious person can look at you, and his gaze can sort of like elevate you, can improve you, can even cure you of a disease. In the same way, a person with the evil eye or negative, inside, their gaze can do something else to you, can affect you in a bad way. And all that is, I believe, me personally, I believe that that's just basically your your spirit being focused through your eye to affect somebody. So the person who somebody who like affects somebody else via the evil eye is basically that person is looking at that person with a real animosity in their heart, with hatred, with that kind of focus thing, and it just basically your spirit can come out and touch their spirit and sort of like make them sick or affect them in some sort of way, right? It's just like a common thing that people feel is when you can feel somebody's gaze on you, right? So some people have this, the sense of being stared at is a very common feeling that people have, right? That you can be somewhere and suddenly you feel, okay, I'm being watched. Okay, how do you know you're being watched? Well, what made you sense that you're being watched, right? Like you feel somebody's eyes on the back of your head and stuff. And this has been actually studied, experimentally in places, right? So they've had like, where people will line up to go into a club or something, right? And you have some researchers in like a window somewhere, and they will all just decide, okay, let's stare at one certain person, and they'll all sit there and stare at that one person, okay, and sort of record if it looks like that person starts to feel nervous or he turns around, like he can feel somebody watching them, and it's been shown that some people are very sensitive to that, right? That as soon as they started staring at them, this person would turn around and it keeps on turning around and it's thinking, okay, it's clear that the person feels they are being watched, right? So what does that come from, right? That comes from, I think, that what like let's say a soft level of the evil eye, or the eye, right? Which can be evil or good, right? That when somebody is staring at you and you are staring at somebody else, you connect with them, right? Your spirit gets focused, because that's what you're looking at. That's where your thoughts go, right? Your thoughts travel with your eyes, and your spirits also travel with your eyes. So they can touch other people and affect them in that kind of way, either good or bad, right? And either good or bad, right? So if you're looking at somebody in a compassionate way, wanting good for them, in a loving way, right? That affects them in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Quantum observer effect, possibly. Yeah, could think of it that way.
And she's
What about ruqya and these sort of things? No. So jinn possession, definitely not. Okay. Ruqya, and I think that's just prayers, right? So when people are doing ruqya and they're doing prayers, okay, it's the same as any other prayer, affecting in a good way. All right,
well,
Muji, I want to bring on
yeah, it's
the
okay.
other guy here.
Yes,
What
yes,
the true Messiah
yeah, okay.
want to discuss the issue.
Thank you very much. We'll get, I will join another time as well, inshallah.
Yeah, you can stay on. I can bring you on later, but
Yeah, okay.
I would just prefer to
All right, okay.
discuss one-on-one with
Yeah, all right, no
the
problem.
next guest.
Thank you very much. Take
Brilliant,
care.
brilliant seeing you again, Muji. It's been a long time, really.
Thank you. Take
Okay,
care, bro.
take care of yourself. Allah barak feek. Take care. Salam. All right, okay. That was the perfect da'wah. If you guys know him, he's got his own channel. So let me bring on. He's put in there as an acronym. Assalamu alaikum.
What's up, bro? Sorry, I was it's kind of long to put on the. Can you hear me?
No problem. Yeah, no problem. Yes, I can hear you. How you been? Yeah, it's long to put it on. Yeah. Well, why have you chosen that name, by the way? What's the story behind that?
So there's a lot of misconceptions, man, and who's the true Messiah? It's Jesus, bro. So that's essentially the gist behind it. It's a question.
I mean, is that really that much of a misconception about that? I mean, that's something like which basically the two biggest religions in the world agree on, right? Christians and Muslims. We all believe that Jesus is the Messiah, right? I mean, the only people who have that misconception, you could say, that he's not are the Jews, I suppose, and the other faiths.
Yeah. I think, and you might agree, the Jews are pretty much responsible for a lot of like today's and history's misdoings and misfortunes. So
yeah. I mean, a section of them. Yeah, it's another topic, exactly. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, when I first saw that, I thought, okay, who is the true Messiah? And I thought, okay, is he going to be? Is the story behind that? Because of course, one issue with the Christians is they have a misidea of what Messiah means. They think Messiah means God, right? A lot of them think that, right? They thought that Messiah means God or Son of God, right? So it's a very strange situation, right? I remember like Bart Ehrman talking about that. If you asked any Jew in the first century, and you say, this person is the Messiah, and you think, oh, you mean he's God? It's like, no, I mean he's the Messiah, right? Messiah just meant for them the king, right? The anointed one. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, is a story behind that Messiah, like somebody saying, when I first saw it, I thought, okay, is this a Christian who's gonna say that Jesus is God?
No.
Anyway.
Oh yes, I believe Jesus is God. Don't get me wrong, but
Sorry?
I believe Jesus is God, but what's behind the name is like there's also misconceptions along like Muslim groups. They say like Jesus is the Messiah, especially Sunnis. They say Jesus is the Messiah, but if you read all their hadith books, it clearly paints Muhammad as the Messiah. He does the biggest, or he has the bigger messianic role, I would say, in comparison to what they believe about Jesus.
All right, so I was right in the beginning of that, right? So you believe that that the Messiah means God.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that was my initial impression when I saw that, because it's a very unusual thing to ask. Again, because generally Muslims and Christians all agree that Jesus was the Messiah. So the only thing they disagree on is what Messiah means, really, right? So that's what I thought when I saw that. And I thought that's like kind of a lead into that.
So
yeah.
So the question about like the taslims and the shirk. So I have one question about shirk. So like, do you think that if you were to pray to another being, do you think that would be shirk?
If you pray to another being, no. Just as itself, no, it doesn't. It's not necessarily shirk. Usually it overlaps, of course, but no.
Do you think that like shirk and associating partners are the same thing? Do you think like it's like a different type of it, or like what's the differentiation in those?
I mean, that's one of the problems, right? This idea of associating partners. I mean, it's a weird phrase, right? I mean, associating partners. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, we don't say, the Quran doesn't say that, right? That's sort of like an interpretation, or is it on its own? That's an interpretation of shirk.
It's like it's directly interpreted. So if you go to 16 verse 20, it's the verse I said in the chat, but 16 verse 20 makes it like pretty explicitly clear that that's a way you can associate.
Let me bring it up. Let me bring it up. If we're gonna, it's because if we're gonna look up the verse, it'd be nice to have them on. So let me just. Okay, how do I stop sharing? And then I'll share again the other one. Screen. There we go. Turn this off. So this verse, right?
Yeah, if you go all the way to the 22, it kind of can read verse 20 to 22, or you could read more of the context, but essentially.
والذين يدعون من دون الله لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون, right? So it doesn't say shirk, right? So far, there's no shirk. I'm talking about just the word shirk, right? So no shirk, right? If we go back, والله يعلم ما تسرون وما تعلنون, right? وإن تعدوا نعمة الله لا تحصوها أفمن يخلق كمن لا يخلق, right? So all of this, you don't see, there's nothing being mentioned about shirk. So what I've actually have a live stream where I did a presentation about what I called it the modeling of shirk. So in the Quran, if you just try to try to just focus on the terminology being used in the Quran, and let it be specific. So when Allah says الذين يدعون من دون الله, take that as something rather than shirk. It doesn't say الذين يشركون بالله, right? Does it say that? No, it says those who make dua to other than Allah. Okay, and when you do that, you'll notice something, right? In the Quran, you have 4 things being mentioned, which are often just all conflated as being shirk, right? So in the Quran, you have sometimes it's talking about dua, like here, right? There's dua, and then you have the phrase min dunillah, right? What does that mean? To other than Allah, right? So you've got dua min dunillah. You have other verses where it says dua ma'allah. It says alladhina yad'una ma'allah, those who do dua to others with Allah. Okay, so that's now 2 separate things.
That's
just hold on. I'll get to it. Right. So that's 2 things. So you've got dua min dunillah, and you've got dua ma'allah. Then you've also got ya'buduna min dunillah, those who do ibadah to other than Allah. So you've got the same phrase being used in those verses. So that's the third thing. And then you never have in the Quran, anywhere in the Quran, where it says they do ibadah to others with Allah, ma'allah, right? That doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? Because instead of saying dua, they are in ibadah to others with Allah, the Quran uses shirk, because that's what shirk means. Shirk means to be in ibadah to others with Allah. Okay, so does that kind of make sense? That's basically what I would say. So when you look at that, and then we just look at the where shirk is actually used, the actual word shirk, right? You find it's always linked with ibadah, right? Basically, that's it. It's always linked with ibadah. When there's ibadah going on, there is shirk, right? Okay, there are some, like a few verses where it's the context doesn't permit it as much to mention that, but an overwhelming majority, that's what it's going to be. So I take these four categories as separate, right? I think dua ma'allah, dua min dunillah, so dua to others with Allah, dua to other than Allah, and ibadah to other than Allah, and shirk. All of those four, these are four things which are separate. They're not all just shirk. You can't just take them all and lump them all together as one thing. They're not one thing. Okay, they are separate.
So what's the difference between like associating partners and shirk?
Well, the key thing is to understanding shirk is to understand ibadah, right? So associating partners with Allah, right? You can associate as many partners with Allah as you want. Let's say, I mean, I'm just giving a proposition here, right? But if you're an ibadah to only Allah, you serve only Allah, right? What did He created you as a creature of ibadah. The human being is a creature of ibadah, of servitude. We have a part of ourselves which is a aspect which will do ibadah, almost no matter what, right? We do that, right? And so to give that part of yourself to Allah alone, even if you believe there are other gods, even if you believe other gods are more powerful than Allah, even if you believe they have all of Allah's attributes, let's say, which is ridiculous, right? But let's say you believe in Zeus, you believe in Odin, you believe all these gods exist, right? And you believe some of them have equal power in Allah in something or other, but your ibadah is only to Allah, right? Then you are not a mushrik. Okay.
So, do you agree that? I mean, I obviously agree that there's a difference between. You agree that there's a difference, but do you think that the verse outlines a way that people associate partners with Allah?
Chapter like this 6, verse?
Yeah, 16 verse 20, and if you keep reading all the way down to 23.
Well, let me see. Hold on, I'm gonna bring it back so I can actually read it more clearly. Where's the tab gone? There it is. So in this case, so الذين يدعون من دون الله لا يخلقون شيئا وهم يخلقون. Right. So here, I mean, it's just saying that those who they make dua to other than Allah, they don't create things, and they are themselves are created. Now, this is already a thing. I think this is just it's rhetorical. They already admit that. So if you take this as talking about this is in dialogue with the people in Mecca. This is the Meccan surah, right? All of the people of Mecca, if you look at many other verses in the Quran, right? The mushrikeen in Mecca, they all believe that Allah is the one who created. They don't associate creation to other than Allah.
Well, it's not like actual rhetoric. He's appealing to logic. He's saying these beings.
Yeah, exactly, logic. Yeah, he's just saying, like, look, the thing which you are making dua to, you already know that they don't create things and that they are created.
Yeah,
which is true. They already knew that. So what are they associating with Allah here?
So. Well, yeah, that's the point. So if you read the next verse, Allah says the same thing. It says they are dead, not alive, and they don't perceive when they'll be resurrected. But if you read 22, if you read 22, that's where it says your God is one God, meaning don't do that. Like if you do that, it's multiple gods. But those who don't believe in hereafter, their hearts are disapproving.
That's true. That's true. So again, like what I said before, believing in multiple ilah, right, varying aliha, right, that is not shirk, right? That is not shirk. You could say, okay, it's again this idea of associating something of Allah. So what is being associated? Divinity? Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying? It's being associated?
Well, there's two things really. Number one, like the act of praying, the act of invocation, and then also divinity.
Well, here in this verse, in the verse of so if you go back to it, it's not saying that they are praying to Allah and other than Allah. This one is talking about those who pray to other than Allah. So they're not associating anything with Allah here. Allah is out of the picture. الذين يدعون من دون الله, right? Those whom where is it? What's it they put in the translation? Do you read Arabic, by the way? I just wanna.
I mean, I'm trying to understand some phrasing, but I'm trying to understand Aramaic first, and then I
All right, okay. Yeah, cool. So I mean, let's have a look at some of these translations. What they say: those unto whom they cry beside Allah. So not Allah. They're not associating Allah. They're not. These are not people who are crying to Allah and other and Allah. You have that phrase in the Quran. You have where it says الذين يدعون مع Allah, with Allah. So instead of this phrase, which is in Arabic means other than Allah, you have other verses in the Quran which talk about those who really do associate. What you call association, what you're saying now association is, which is to make dua to Allah and make dua to other than Allah. Which I don't see how that's an association.
It's a different type of association because when you do beside Allah, like it's like a praying, it's like an intercessor type of thing. If you say beside Allah, then it's different than I prayed to Allah this time and then I prayed to Allah, or I pray to some other God, 4 months out of the year. So it's a different scenario when it says beside Allah. That's kind of referring directly to an intercessor. But when it says and those they invoke other than Allah create nothing, it's referring to the ones that, hey, I invoke Allah this time of the year, or like some duration, and then I invoke Allah, or I invoke other gods another time. So it's not necessarily that it's them alone and they're worshiping them alone. No, it's they're going to these people as well.
This verse is not talking about worship, right? This is what I mean. That the one issue I see is that we always keep on adding in terminology which isn't there. So here we're not talking about ibadah at all. There's nothing about ibadah in these verses, right? But I can see what you're saying, right? And you can sort of extrapolate that if you like, right? So you can say, okay, when they say they are making dua to other than Allah, it means they are doing that part of the year, and the rest of the year they're doing with Allah. But I could say no, that is part of the verses where Allah is talking about those who make dua to others with Allah. So if you're making dua to Allah part of the year and to other than Allah part of the year, you're still making dua to others with Allah. So you're making dua to Allah and other than Allah as well. Right? That's still part of you. Right?
If you go to 22, it says your God is one God. So that means when it's saying your God is one God, they're saying you can only pray.
They have more than one ilah. That's true. Right? So
exactly. So that would imply that they're praying to Allah as well. That would actually be the position, not just like an interpretation.
No, I mean it's saying here إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَالَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ مُنْكِرَةٌ وَهُمْ مُسْتَكْبِرُونَ. It says your ilah is just one ilah, right? It's one ilah. So they have multiple ilah, right? Multiple aliha, right? And this is sort of like attacking that idea that there's more than one ilah.
So right? Then would you agree that?
But that doesn't mean here. There's no indication that Allah is one of their aliha, right? I mean, you don't have to take the idea here from this verse that one of the ilahs that they do dua to, for example, is Allah.
Well, when
it's just saying they have more so this, for example, this verse would apply to the I don't know what's called the Greeks, right? Who did they have? They had Zeus. They had whoever what did they have, man?
Apollo.
Zeus. Apollo. They had all of these aliha, right? And these verses you could say apply to them, and they didn't believe in Allah at all. So if you go back from the beginning of this, well, they apply and they don't apply, because again these verses are directed at the Arabs who knew that their gods didn't create anything. The Greeks believed their gods created things, right? So here, if you go all the way from, like, where is it?
So
from where we were talking about.
Then would you still agree to a position that, like, say you pray to someone on a separate occasion and then pray to God on a separate occasion, you associated a partner. I mean, yeah, you associated a partner with Allah.
The problem is I don't think this word has any real Islamic meaning, right? Quranic meaning, associate with Allah.
It
right?
does, because like if you go to 4 verse 48, it says Allah doesn't forgive people who associate.
No, it says shirk. So I would prefer if we. That's why I'm pretty adamant that we have to really stick with the Quranic terminology, right? So yes, shirk, yeah, but I don't call the word in English when somebody says you associate something with something else. The word associate is too flimsy. It's flimsy. It's a flimsy word. I associate this with this. I associate. An association can be anything, right?
It says
association can be anything.
On you,
right? When you are talking about it, when you're talking about association, what you have to tell me, associate what? If you're going to say associate ibadah, then of course that's shirk, right? If you're going to say I'm going to, no, and you can't even associate ibadah, really, right? It's again, it's a weird thing, because shirk itself, it means when you partner something out, right? Where is the shirk happening? It's not happening in Allah, right? The shirk is happening in you, right? You're the mushrik, right? The shirk is happening. It isn't happening in Allah, right? You say associate Allah something of Allah. What can you associate with Allah? Well, you're going to attach something to Allah and say, okay, there I've added this, I've taken away this. No, the shirk is happening in you, right? If you want a very clear verse to tell you about how shirk is let me pull it out for you.
So in 48 is I don't know how to say it, Anu Shraka. Is the base word mushrik for that one?
Yeah. Shirk, mushrik, and yushrika bihi, right? So the one that you're talking about, that Allah does not forgive, that shirk is done with him, right?
It's
saying shirk.
And Allah yagfiru. I don't know.
Yeah.
In yushraka bihi.
Yeah. Well, you just said that, and yushrika bihi, that shirk should be done with it. Allah does not forgive, that shirk should be done with him, right? So it's using the word shirk there. You have to really, if you go back and check all of these things where they say associate with Allah, just try to look in the Arabic if it's saying shirk or not, right?
Yeah.
Because I really do believe that we have some terminology that's being muddled around here, right?
Okay, so
if you watch out for where the actual shirk is being used. And by the way, the interesting thing is that shirk it doesn't appear in any of the early surahs. So I don't know how firmly you believe or understand the sort of the chronology of the Quran, how was like the early surahs and the later surahs. Of course, I assume we accept that there's a Meccan period and
do you reject all hadith, or do you accept some? I
accept some.
Well, there's a pretty strong hadith, and it's Sahih. I can get you the number, but it says supplication is worship. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Do you accept it?
No, because I mean, I can accept it as sort of almost not rhetorical, but it says there's different versions of it. Of course, the version says al-du'a mukhul ibadah, right? The du'a is sort of du'a is the essence. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Mukh is literally the marrow, right? So it's like saying that the du'a is the marrow of servitude, of ibadah, right? And I don't think that's true, because look, these kind of key things we have to take the Quran first. When you have a Quranic mindset first, then you can sort of sift out the hadiths. You can look at the hadiths and then decide, I can accept this one or I can't accept this one. But first, you need to be grounded in the Quran, right? You have to have a fully Quranic mindset first before you're able to judge the narrations, right? So when you have this narration which says ad-du'a mukhul ibadah, right? I can understand what is being said, right? It's talking really about not even ibadah. It's talking about what we'd call the rituals, like salah. Salah is not ibadah, right? In salah we have du'a, and the essence of salah is du'a. The essence of prayer is this du'a, this supplication. But salah itself in the Quran is not ibadah, right? We sometimes think about that salah is ibadah, but in the Quran, salah and ibadah are separate, right? So you have verses like, like when Allah spoke to Musa, right? فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِيمِ الصَّلَاةِ لِذِكْرِي. So serve me, being ibadah, be my abd, my servant, and establish prayer for my remembrance. You also have in Surah Al-Bayyinah, where it's talking about to the Christians and Jews, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. They were not ordered except that they should be in ibadah to Allah sincerely in religion, right? مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاء, singly to Him, and that they establish salah and give zakah. So ibadah and salah are separate. So I understand, because remember, look, the hadiths are being transmitted by meaning. I mean, I don't know if you know about how the history of hadiths and how they're transmitted, etc. All the hadiths, any of the hadith scholars will tell you this, they're transmitted by meaning. So the person listened, understood something, and then he sort of put it in his own words, right? So did the Prophet say that ad-du'a mukhul ibadah, right? He probably said something, I don't know, ad-du'a like, maybe he said ad-du'a mukhul salah. Maybe he actually said a word like that. And then the person just took, okay, salah is ibadah, because that's what, people have in their minds. And so it got transmuted probably to something like that. So I'd rather take from the Quran first, right, the understanding of these key terms. And then I look at the narrations, right, and be able to filter them out, right, and be able to see, what matches and what doesn't.
So can I ask you about because I mean 16 verse 20 wasn't my only verse. Can I ask you about another one?
Yeah, sure. Let me just quickly show you this, right? The verse which I've got here. It's a very good way to see what shirk means, right? So it says here, ضرب الله مثلا. Allah is giving you an example. رجل فيه شركاء. A man in whom are shuraka, partners, right? Shuraka, mutashakisuna, quarreling over him. So what does that mean? There's a man, and there are different partners that have a claim to him. Okay,
Yeah.
That's shirk. Right? This is the example of shirk, right? So you've got this one man.
Yeah.
Sorry,
if you go to like Salafi, like they're all explanations of shirk. There's actually a concept that they take, their concept of shirk and obedience.
Yeah.
So I mean, they take this exact concept and they say it's it's a way you can commit shirk, but you're saying this is pretty much the entirety of shirk, and then everything else kind of like
that's pretty much what I'm saying. So they've lumped in a lot of things with shirk, right? But shirk is really just about ibadah, right? It's this, ما خلقت الجن والإنس ليعبد. I did not create man and jinn except that they should be in ibadah, right? So that part of yourself, which is ibadah, which is servitude, which is like this devotional reverence, obedience, servitude, where you look at something else as your God, right? And you serve it and you obey that devotion, like a real servant, like real abd. Ibadah, servitude, comes from the word abd, slave, right? A good slave. How does a good slave, view his master, right? He's above him, reverence towards him, whatever you say, I do, that sort of thing, right? So if you understand the ibadah, really understand ibadah, then you understand shirk, because what shirk is to take that ibadah that you have and partner it out to others. So you give some of the ibadah to this person, some to this, and some to Allah, right? So in ibadah to Allah and other than Allah too. Okay?
Yeah.
So Allah can command you and somebody else can command you. And sometimes you will obey Allah, sometimes you will obey this other person. Okay? So that's why this method, for example, is given here in the Quran. It's talking about a person, on him are many shuraka, many owners, right? Shuraka, right? That's one example. And the other example is rajulun salamun li rajul, a man totally devoted to one other man. Are they the same? Right? The verse is saying here, are they the same? Okay, Allah has struck an example of a man shared by disagreeing partners and a man who's owned by just one man. Are they equal? Are they equally alike? Praise be to Allah, but most of them do not know. Right? So shirk is about that. Right? And that's why the key verse for the definition of shirk, in my view, is at the end of Surah Al-Kahf, which gives it to you pretty succinctly. It's Surah 18, of course, or the Kahf, the very last verse. If you go down to the very last verse, what does it say? It says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ, I am only a mortal man like you. And it has been revealed to me that your ilah is but one ilah, your God is but one God. And so whoever hopes for the meeting with his Lord, let him do righteous work and make none a share, a shirk, of the ibadah, the worship. Here it says worship. I mean, I don't like the word worship either. Ibadah, servitude, right? And the servitude of the due to his Lord. La yushrik bi ibadati rabbihi ahada. Don't make shirk in the ibadah to your Lord. Don't make shirk in what? The ibadah. Not the dua, not the, I don't know, attributes, not this, not that. And the reason for that, my friend, is, you know the verse that Allah does not forgive shirk, yes?
Yeah.
Why shirk? Why is shirk such a bad thing, right? I mean, if you're talking about other things, you're talking about the taslim in the salah, that's shirk. So if I say Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, right, and I believe he hears me, right, and well, let's say even more, I believe that he can hear everybody on the planet, okay, and you think that I'm associating an attribute with him, okay, well, why does that mean that? Why is that so bad that Allah will never forgive it?
Oh, yeah. So essentially, that's in its action. If you, I can get you the verse, but in the Quran, it essentially tells you not to speak to the dead, and it's not talking about any form of like
no, but okay, no, but I'm asking just religion aside, just the idea itself, because we're saying that this is something so evil, so bad, Allah will never forgive it, right? So even let's take that, speaking to the dead. Why will Allah not forgive somebody speaking to the dead? What's wrong? What's so bad about that? What's so evil about that? Do you believe Allah will forgive a murderer?
Yeah, but Jesus Christ died on the cross for it, bro. But I mean,
okay, but just Qur'anically, from the view of Islam, do you believe that Allah will forgive because do you believe that Allah will not forgive shirk?
Yeah, I mean, I believe he forgives, if you repent of the worship of other gods, like if you.
So you believe Allah will forgive shirk, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that, but. I mean,
okay, then what's the point of that verse where Allah says Allah will not forgive shirk?
I mean,
if it's just like any other sin, where Allah will forgive it, right? Why is it being mentioned here that Allah will not forgive shirk?
I mean, I don't believe this, but this is what the Quran is saying. That's what I'm asking, because if it's saying that it's not going to be forgiven, I mean, the whole point was to actually kind of ask about Muhammad, but you're not really like Sunni or anything, so so it's kind of hard to pinpoint it down. But
I understand.
Because I'm just trying to go with you through like what's actually shirk before we actually get into the taslim.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
shirk
completely.
Is,
I understand.
It's not difficult to get, right? I mean, it really is about that servitude, and the reason why Allah will not forgive it is because it's that kind of servitude to other than Allah. Allah is free; He doesn't need anything. He doesn't ask anything of you but the good, right? But when you're an ibadah to other than Him, right? That's it. I mean, you're open to committing all sorts of atrocities, right? Because now you can be under the influence of somebody who's influenced by the devil or shaitan, right? You've now become a servant of somebody else who will have some other interests, right? Who is not necessarily always good, right? You've demeaned yourself into like a slave of another person, right? And now you can do anything. He can make you do anything. If you're a real mushrik, right? Your idol can make you do anything, and you can see that now, right? Like look what's happening in Gaza and all these places, right? If you're in ibadah, you can even be in ibadah to like a nation, right? I'm a servant thing, like my nation, right or wrong, right? You have this. Remember that film? What's called Good Will Hunting? I think it's called, or whatever, with the Tom Cruise, where you have where the Marines are like core unit, God, country above all, right? Country at the top of the hierarchy, What my country tells me to do, I do. Tells me to kill, go to Iraq, murder, I do. Right? This is the problem. That's why shirk is so bad. Right? When you have people who are in the state of shirk, they can do anything. Right? Their morality, and Allah can't stop them. Allah commanding them is not going to stop them.
If you kind of take the like the Sunni Islam or the Salafi kind of theology to it, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot as comparison to what you're saying. But if you go to I forget the verse off the top of my head, but essentially it says, you know, they cannot hear you. Essentially saying don't talk to the dead. And it's classically, you know, interpreted as it's just forbidden, like you can't do it. It's not like shirk or anything, but it's haram. Like you can't do this. And if you go to their like scholars, like specifically Salafi scholars, like I believe one of them is Ibn Qayyim, he says that if you repeatedly try to like reach out to someone, now that's like an act of worship towards them. So like say like something is if you have like a deceased person and you just try to like strike up a conversation one time, that wouldn't be like, that'd be forbidden, but it's not like polytheism or anything. But if you continuously try to do it, it's going to be like a form of polytheism according to the scholars. And
I mean, you have to understand that that whole thing, right? It's a recent phenomenon, right? It wasn't even in the original tafsirs that it's haram to speak to the dead or anything like that. No, it is. It's never been haram to. This came about. This kind of tafsir came about in the attack against the Sufis. So originally, the Salafi da'wah, the Wahhabi da'wah, its eyes were focused on against the Sufis and the Tasawwuf, right? Because that's what was the majority of the Ummah, right? When the first Saudi state revolted against, you know, the Ottoman rule and stuff. Who were the Ottomans? They were the Sufis, right? And so the Wahhabi thing came out, and it basically said everybody's mushrik. Why are they mushrik? Because they make dua to the, you know, they make tawassul. They ask for intercession from the dead. They speak to the dead. So then of course, they looked at these verses and they started to reinterpret them as meaning that. They don't say that. I mean, I'll pull out the verse now, which you're referring to.
If you look at all of Sunni and Salafi, if you look at their sources, it's taught that Muhammad's like intercessory status as a prophet is valid after his death. So they're invoking him like as an intercessor, which is shirk. Since he's the last prophet, supposedly it's fine.
But so like that verse where it's first of all, it's in the first person. It's talking to the prophet only, and it's more it's talking to him that you can't make the dead hear. The dead here means the people who are alive. They're living physically, but they're dead spiritually. That you can't make the dead to hear this message. That's what it's about, right? So it says you cannot make the dead hear, nor can you make the deaf hear when they turn away. It's not really talking about speaking to the dead, like making the dead hear and stuff like that, right? So it's not about that. It's about the people who are living but dead inside, right? It's not talking about the people who are. It's not talking about the physically dead people, right? Or it's reference to the people. So it's talking to the prophet that he can't make them. He can't make these dead people hear him, right? Just like he can't make the deaf hear, right? You can't make these people listen to you, people who are dead inside. That's why you have this other verse in the Quran which says, يُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا. So if I pull that out for you, the Quran is going to warn those who are alive. Okay, what does that mean? It means that there's people who are alive and not people who are dead. يُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا. لِيُنذِرَ. So it's in Surah Yasin, I know that, verse 70. So 36, 70. Right, so it talks here about the Quran. Actually, the previous verse I mentioned it in this live stream. It says, وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنبَغِي لَهُ. We did not teach him poetry, and it is not befitting for him. It's only a reminder and a clear Quran. Why? لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا. So that he might warn the living. To warn whoever is alive, right? وَيَحِقَّ الْقَوْلَ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ, and make the word, against the ingrates. Kafirin, of course, doesn't mean disbeliever, right? The ingrates, to make it true against them. Why? Because the ingrate, the kafirin, are dead. You've got the dead and you've got the living. Right? Somebody who's already alive, he will be reached by the Quran. The person who is dead inside, they will not be reached. Right? So that's what it's talking about. It's not talking about. See, this they have such a shallow reading of the Quran, really. Right? When Allah takes to the Prophet, you will not make the dead hear, and they think, oh, it means it's haram to go to a grave and speak to the person. No, it's not haram to go to a grave and speak to the person in the grave. And how do you know they don't hear you, right? And besides, the people and some of the people who are dead are alive, according to the Quran. It says, don't think those who are killed in the way of Allah that they're dead. Rather, they are alive. عند ربهم يرزقون. With their Lord, they are being sustained.
So,
right. So,
would you support like tawassul or like I forget the ishigata? I forget.
Yeah. So there's this thing about tawassul and istighatha. So istighatha, no, right? But that I don't necessarily think it's shirk. It's going to be dua ma'Allah, like making dua to others with Allah, right? Depending on the person's, like, what they mean by it, the intentions and all the rest of it. Tawassul is just basically it means invoking in your dua. So your dua is being directed to Allah only, right? But you're mentioning somebody else, right? Saying, Allah, for the sake of the Prophet Muhammad, or for the sake of this, or for the sake of that, I ask you to do this or that. That's tawassul, right? It's like basically, it's like finding what's it called? Or wasta, or whatever. It's basically like mentioning somebody else, right, to gain favor. Like, but it isn't. It's still the tawassul is still dua to Allah, and the Quran says, O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah and seek to Him a means of approach. Seek to Him a wasila. Literally says wasila. So try to find a way of becoming closer to Allah, right? So you can do that, right? There's nothing essentially wrong with that.
Yeah. So okay. So the next verse I had a question about was it was chapter 17, verse 56, and then
17:56. So قل أدعو الذين زعمتم من دونه فلا يملكون كشف الضر عنكم ولا تحويلا. So it says, so call upon whoever you want, whoever you wish, or whoever you think, right? Whoever you assert. أدعو الذين زعمتم, like whoever you like, sort of like زعمتم means to sort of like you claim, whoever you claim to be, to have power, or to be, or whoever you claim is a god, or whoever you claim, whatever. So say, O Muhammad, to them, call on whoever you claim other than Allah. They will not be able to take away any harm from you or change it. Yeah. So this again, it's dua, right? So it's talking about dua, and it's talking about to dua other than Allah, others than Him, right? So anybody other than Allah who you claim can take away harm or change it, okay, you claim that, call them, and you'll see that they can't do that. Yeah, so again, I wouldn't, going back to the idea of shirk, right, this isn't an example of that, because we're not talking about ibadah, right? We're not talking about ibadah.
I'm just strictly talking about like associating partners.
So if you're going to say this is associating others as being able to, remove a harm or change it, then this has that. Yeah, but again, that's why I don't like the word associate. It's a very flimsy thing, right? I'm associating this with Allah. What does that mean? So when I think something else, calling upon it will relieve somebody else or something else, calling upon them will relieve this issue that I have. I'm associating that with Allah. Like how am I associating it with Allah? In English, it doesn't make sense to me, right?
You'd be associating what in an act, like for example, in an action. So for example, like you prostrate, you're just supposedly only supposed to be prostrating towards Allah, or like towards the direction he pointed for you. So like if you prostrate to like a rabbit, that's obviously a form of like polytheism, because you're prostrating, doing an act of worship to something else. So like the same way praying is an action, speaking is an action, right? If you were to pray,
but it's not. I mean, for example, can you use the word associate in that sort of way in some other non-religious context? So if I said, for example, I associate one of my employers with another. Let's say I'm a teacher working at school, and I associate one of my teachers with the principal. What does that mean?
it just means that they're related in the field of work.
They're related in some sort of way. That's it. If I say I associate my teacher with my principal. Okay, if I listen to my fellow teacher, my colleague, right, instead of listening to my principal, am I associating my thing as with the principal? No, I'm listening to him instead of the principal. I'm not really associating him with the principal. I've sort of like cut out the principal completely here. So if I'm working in a company, and I have my colleague and my boss is in the upstairs, the upstairs like higher up HQ place, right? And I listen only to my colleague. I'm not associating my colleague with the boss. I'm now basically making my colleague the boss, right? Practically, I'm saying you're my boss, and but I'm not associating him with it. I'm not putting him there. I haven't taken him and put him sort of like, I don't know. It's a very flimsy way of trying to put in what the Quran is talking about, right? The Quran is concerned with ibadah. It's concerned with dua, right? And ibadah, these sort of things. It's not associated with. It's not concerned with this thing of associating, right? Don't associate with Allah this or that or the other, right? Learning about Allah is a process, right? Allah is not taking people to task because they have some ignorance about Him, right? That they don't know about this or they don't know about that, or and they need to learn, right? Nor is Allah taking people to real task for stupidity, like bowing to an idol. Okay, this is another thing which I've mentioned many times, right? Like prostrating to a wooden idol isn't shirk, right? And it's one of the least harmful of things. Like Allah is going to, if you prostrate to a wooden stone idol, right? And that's it. That's all you do, nothing else. What is Allah going to be up in arms about that? Why?
Okay, so you don't think that's an act of like polytheism? Okay, so
no,
that's different.
It's not polytheism in itself, right? If you believe this thing is a god, right? Then yeah, it's a polytheism. But I'm just talking about the act itself, right? The act itself of prostrating to a wooden or stone idol, right? And there's nothing else connected with it. There's no like religion associated with it, that you have like any rituals which you have to do. You don't have to do any child sacrifice. You don't have to do this, that. There's nothing. There's no priests that speak for this idol. There's nothing. It's just an idol you have, and you prostrate to it. And the rest of your day, you're going about your life. Right?
Yeah. So
what is the evil there?
So, like, do you think that if you were to ask it for something without any other intention, like if you were to ask?
Well, I mean, just leave that aside. I'm just prostrating to it, right? Prostrating to this wooden idol, right? Every day you wake up, you have this wooden idol, you prostrate to it. Okay, you prostrate. You have like this ritual. You prostrate. Why? You think it makes your day lucky? Let's say. Okay, you're not asking it for anything or this, but you think it makes your day lucky. Let's say that.
Within oneself, because you're not giving the proper worship, and you can't be spiritually sound until you give the proper worship. But I mean, in terms of like comparing this to like the theology that lines up until modern day, prostration is a pretty big part of the worship, and it's a pretty big act of worship as far as like I've seen.
Yeah, well, okay, let's say that. Yeah, so you're worshiping this idol through prostration, right? Daily, right? Okay, and that's all you're doing, right? Why is that such a, and that this person now you say is mushrik, and that Jannah is haram for him, and this person, let's say now he's also, just generally a good person. He's good to his parents, he looks after his wife, his children, gives charity where he can. He's never murdered anybody, he doesn't cheat, doesn't steal, he's honest, right? Generally a normal good person. What you'd imagine is a good person. He just does this, right? And now he's a mushrik and going to be in hell forever, and Jannah is haram for him. Why?
I mean, that's what.
So
That's,
you see this view,
I mean, I
this
don't believe.
view of God, right, as some sort of like insanely jealous, petty about something like this, as this hurts him. This hurts his ego. This is something which is like he's very hugely angry about. You're going to go in hell forever because you did it, and it's stupidity. That's why the Quran hardly mentions idols at all, right? The Quran doesn't mention. Almost in Mecca, we are told from the history there were so many idols. Not one of the idols in Mecca is mentioned, right? Not one of them. There are 3 idols from the time of the Prophet. I mentioned Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, and they're just dismissed as names. Like the Quran says, these are just names that you've named, you and your forefathers. Allah has not sent any authority about them, and that's it. Nothing else is mentioned about them. Which I maintain that the Quran looks at this kind of worship to like this having these like worship and adoration of these physical inanimate objects. It looks at it as stupidity, because that's all it is. It's just stupidity. It's nothing more. The actual shirk is the obedience to the people. Right?
I agree
the
with
people behind the idols.
I agree
right?
with the first part. I mean, if you look at all the like Sunnis and Salafi, Wahhab, whatever, it's all like self-contradicting. Like if you take their, especially if you take their theology on Allah and like the anthropomorphic kind of thing, it's like it's limiting God, because in their hadith, he's supposedly on earth and he's supposedly present. So it's like you're saying an infinite being is fitting in within finite. It's
there's a lot of stupidity there. I mean, I used to, again, I'm from a Sunni background, and from like the traditional sort of Sunni background of being like I was a Maliki, following the Maliki jurisprudence, and the Ash'ari Aqidah, right?
Oh,
so
so
the main,
so
the
you were
Ash'ari.
leaning Sufi too, or
I was definitely, that was the main thing. I was mostly much more into like the Sufi practices and stuff like that. I used to go to like the Dhikr circles, different tariqas, right? All of that, right? And I used to, beginning, I used to look at these things of the, God has a face and this and that. I used to look at them as it's silly, etc. Now, to be honest, I don't find it as a bigger issue, because you speak to some of these people, right? And you just have to understand that people have different aptitudes, right? So you don't have to. There isn't a cutoff IQ to be guided, right? So somebody who believes that Allah is like this giant person in the sky with a face and, I don't know, undisclosed number of eyes and 1 foot and 2 right hands, and these are all real stuff. There are some people who are, there's nothing wrong with being created with a lower intelligence, right? And they can't think as abstractly, right? For them, okay, that can be an image of Allah that they have. Again, that's not the issue, right? That's not the issue. Well, what is the issue? The issue is what are you being commanded to do, right? Your view of Allah. It's much more important for you to understand that Allah is going to be reward the righteous and punish the wicked. That Allah wants you to be honest, right? Allah says in the Quran that when the last verse in the last surah revealed, right? هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم. This is a day where the honest, the people who speak true, shall be benefited for speaking the truth, and they shall be in Jannah. Right? Yeah. It's much more important for you to believe that about Allah than to believe that He's incorporeal, and that this idea that He has a real face and this and that is not true. No, maybe some people they can't think that high level, right? So what are you gonna do? You're gonna like try to for them, that's a sort of level that they can't abstract very, very easily. Some people find it very easy to think in abstractions. Some people don't, right? Some people are very visual in terms of how they view things, right? They're very, like, you can tell them a story and they play it out like a movie in their minds, right? I don't do that, right? I can't do that. Sometimes some people, you say a word of something and that image automatically pops in their mind. Other people know, right? So it's not as big an issue, I find it, anymore, right? The whole debate, and the people and Muslims are still debating that. You see it on Twitter, people still debating the whole, Allah descends and rises. Does he sit on the throne, not sit on the throne? Leave these for some people. I mean, it's annoying when you have people who are obviously able to grasp a high level of understanding, right? And they don't because of dogmatism. That's different, right?
Yeah.
But I think that sort of like kind of sort of like dumbing down of things, it has its place, right? I mean, one of the narrations that they have is the Prophet, somebody wanted to free a believing slave, as what's it called, to recompense some bad deed or something they did. So they had someone say, and the man came to the Prophet, said, I have this slave girl, I want to release her, but I don't know if she's a believer or not. So the Prophet asked her, where is Allah? And she pointed up, right? It's a 16-year-old Bedouin girl, or was she 14 or something, right? Let her point up. That's not evidence for you now, somebody of a 130 or 40 IQ person who's a 45-year-old man, you use that as evidence to say Allah is up, right? Yeah. This is a Bedouin girl, illiterate, right? The Prophet wanted to check if she was a believer or not a believer. So he asked her, where is Allah? She pointed up to the sky. And he said, yeah, she's a believer, so I'll free her.
So hey, I gotta go real quick. I gotta go to with my mother. But if you ever have a debate with like someone who's Sunni, just post like a community chat or something, and I'll reply to it, and maybe I can give you some sources because they kind of butcher it and they shoot themselves. So,
Well, to be honest, I'm not really into the debate stuff. To be honest, I mean, the debate doesn't really help, and very often, I look when I'm discussing with people or having. If I was going to have these kind of debates, you really have to just see. I mean, I put a post about this a while back. That most debates don't go anywhere. It's just, I mean, it sort of helps algorithms. People love to gets the blood pumping, and people love to hear these kind of like people going at it and stuff. But more often than not, just increases a person's hard-heartedness in their view, right? And nothing more. And unless you can sense that you're able to increase a person's hilm over their jahl, so these are two concepts, right? That when somebody's in this state of jahl, this sort of like arrogant barbarism, right? You can't reach them, right? You just can't reach them. So I'm not really a debate kind of guy. I'll have discussions with people, but I also don't have time for it, to be honest. I mean, this channel, I really want to do a lot more on this channel, but I've got my kids homeschooling, and I've got parents with some health issues, which I want to get, and work and this and that. So
I mean, I've gotten some pretty dumb threats, so stay safe. But I'll. Again to the next live stream. So
drop down anytime. It was brilliant talking to you. I didn't catch your name, my friend. What was it? Oh, he ran. Okay, that's brilliant. Let's check the chat quickly. We've been here 2 hours now. There are many videos and stories that talk about jinn possession, how you do ruqya on them. Yeah, they are, and I'm open to the idea of it, but Quranically, I don't see anything for it. I mean, the Quran talks about miss, right? الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس, that you can be touched by sort of shaitan, and maybe that can mess up with your mind and stuff. The actual possession, where this jinn is inside you or whatever and controlling you, I don't think that Allah will allow that over people, right? Because then, okay, where's the accountability? What if this jinn can make you murder somebody and then you get killed for it? And also just how does that logistically work, I suppose, right? I mean, if you've got your own spirit in your body, it's integrated with your body, so you can control your body. And what does that? How does the jinn get in there and dispossess that or move that away? Do you die, sort of half die, right? Because how do you die? You die when your spirit is removed from your body. You can't control it anymore, right? So what's happening when the jinn possesses you? You sort of like half die, and then when the jinn gets out, you reintegrate your spirit of your body. I don't know, right? So I'm tentatively open to it, but the thing about it is that when you talk about ruqya and stuff like that, I've also seen these videos and things where these people who are possessed, right? They've sort of like had like people say, okay, let me just try this instead. Like, how they recite Qur'an on them and they scream, I'm burning, I'm burning. The jinn inside is supposed to be screaming that the Qur'an is burning them, right? So there was this person who tried this on people, on some people, right? Who, they don't know the Qur'an very well, right? Just like illiterate, not, Bedouin type people. And rather than reciting the Qur'an, he recited poetry, right? So old Arabic poetry, recited it on them. And the person, of course, thinks he's receiving ruqya, right? He's receiving ruqya and Quran. And again, it's just the person shouting, I'm burning, I'm burning. The jinn is shouting that he's being burnt by the Arabic erotic love poetry of the past, right? And then, of course, you have the same thing happening in Christianity, right? So you have this people who are supposedly possessed, right? And what do? They have the same thing. They come recite the Bible over them, right, in Latin or something, and the person screaming, I'm burning, not burning, but they're screaming like they're possessed, right? And you can recite any Latin thing that the patient doesn't know is not part of scripture, and it's same effect. Person is saying, it's hurting me, it's hurting me. So what is it? It's just a psychological thing, it seems, right? So I'm skeptical. I'm healthily skeptical, right? Why is it that jinn possession, all of this stuff exists only in the Muslim and in the religious world, right? The Muslim world, they have jinn possession and evil eye all over the place, whereas in the secular world it isn't there. No, so of course, people that live at the edge of deserts and stuff, you have 1,001 jinn stories, but that's because you're living at the edge of a desert. You've ever been at the edge of a desert, right? You're in this, like I have been, right? Where you're there in a town and you reach the end of the town and you look out and it's like this huge swath of empty desert and it's spooky, right? But that isn't going to give you like a lot of stories. A lot of stories are going to come out from there. So I'm skeptical about all of this kind of stuff, right? But there are certainly people that believe in all of this black magic and stuff, and they do it. I was even, with my parents at the beach in one country in the Middle East, and just playing around in the beach, and I dig in the sand, and I pull out this little pouch, right, which is like tied up with, leather pouch and tied up, and it's got like a thing that you wrap it. It's like a ta'weed, what the Indian subcontinent guys call a ta'weed, where you hang it around your neck as protection, right? And inside it, of course, it's supposed to be Qur'an and good things and stuff, and often it isn't, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to open this up. So I scoured the beach for like sharp sharp stones and stuff, and I tried to pry it open. It took a long time. It was very, very well made. When I opened it up, I find this little sack inside, right? I opened the sack. Inside it is another little sack. I open that up and I find a bunch of strings with knots, right? So a bunch of like long white thread with lots of knots in them. Right? So you have that. You have a lot of there's a lot of belief in this kind of stuff, even if it isn't real. And just believing in some things can make it real. I mean, there's even the placebo effect, right? Where you just give somebody a patient, give him some a tablet of just sugar, right? But he believes it's a cure. He takes it and he gets better, right? So it's a recognized thing, the placebo effect. Every single disease in the world has been cured by the placebo effect. So what is doing the curing? Right? It's not a tablet. It's the person inside, right? It's their spirit, sort of like I'm curing them in that kind of way, I think. So I'm skeptical. Let's just say. Yeah, sihr is in the Quran. Like I said, there is definitely real sihr, but I think most of the thing that passes for sihr now is nonsense, not real, right? There is real sihr, and it can work, but I'm guessing only a few. It's like in a handful of. It's closely guarded by few people. Not this thing where you can buy, all these books with sihr in them and stuff like that. How to do sihr and this and that and the other. So, sihr, though, yeah, it is a real thing in the Quran. But that's one thing, and jinn possession is something else, right? I mean, it's almost like the modeling of shirk, right? All of these things are being pulled together: evil eye, sihr, jinn possession. All of these things are like one thing called black magic, right? And now you take this bundle of things which you've called black magic, and you say the evidence for that is in the Quran, right? With where in this one verse about, the angels teaching people to, separate a man from his wife and all that kind of stuff, right? So the sihr is there, but we don't have to mix it all up, of jinn possession and the rest of it. Yeah, I mean, look, this is something which what he mentioned here is that jinn possession could be real, because they accused the Prophet of getting possessed and making poems, right? So this has got to do with the idea of what they. So when they say somebody's majnoon, right? Majnoon, it means crazy, right? And what they said by that is somebody's like, it doesn't mean a person has a jinn inside him, right? Just the word majnoon. But yeah, they also believed in jinn possession, probably, right? The pagan Arabs, but that doesn't mean that it's true, right? So it's not evidence that it's true, even if they believe that. But mostly, there was this idea that, very often, why do they call what the Prophet brought sihr, right? So they keep on accusing what the Prophet brought as sihr. All he had was the Quran, right? Why did they call the Quran sihr? Right, that's a question that needs to be asked, right? Why did they call what the Quran, what the Prophet was bringing, the recitation? Why did they call it sihr, right? Is it because it split some people up from their families? So, some people became Muslim, some didn't. So it caused this kind of rift. I've heard the ideas that it's because they had this belief that this kind of inspiration, right, came from this kind of like in Christianity you have the muse, yeah, muse, right? The sort of spirit of inspiration, right? And that spirits can inspire things into you, right? So now that's why they would call they'd call that majnoon as well, right? He'd been sort of like being inspired by a spirit, right? Quran is being inspired to him by some spirit, right? So that there's that. But again, look, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into that, because, to be honest, I haven't thought about these issues as much. They're not as primary for me. But I think that these kind of things, jinn possession and sihr, they've been overblown in the Muslim world, right? They've been far overblown in the Muslim world. I remember, who was it who was speaking about how the Arabs viewed sihr and how the Arabs viewed Yeah, because they considered like certain speech to be like magic, right? That somebody could be so eloquent that you can sort of put a spell on somebody, right, by your eloquence. Okay, so that's why they would call what he brought sihr, because it had such power in it, right? So they thought, okay, this is like magic. So I think it was Mufti Abu Layth who was speaking about that kind of stuff. Was it him? Not sure. Anyway, that's that. All right, I think we'll call it a okay. So now, kind of like hypnosis. Yeah, exactly. I mean, hypnotism is you'd call that kind of sihr, right? Maybe that's the sihr that was brought down in by the angels, right? Maybe that's all sihr is, just this hypnosis. That hypnotize somebody, and through that split between a man and his wife, right? Kind of teach people about that. What's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. There's that, right? It's kind of hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, and using words to affect people's conscious states and stuff like that. Maybe that's all the sihr is, really. Could be. So that's what I'd say. Okay, so I think we can call it a night, unless there's anybody else who has something they want to say. I just want to look through the chat quickly. If there's something I missed, there's this. How could the Prophet appointed Ali and Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman disobeyed the Prophet? It's impossible. Yeah, I mean, that's a long discussion in itself. But it's basically because, look, the view that we have of the early community, the early Sahaba, the situation there, right? All of that needs to be reviewed. It makes perfect sense once you understand the situation, right? What was happening, why it happened. And it's not like, you must understand that, thinking about it in the best possible way, it's not like they giving them the best interpretation or benefit of the doubt, right? It's that they saw that what was happening, and they were like, okay, why does it have to be Ali? It could be, we could do just as good a job as Ali. Why does it have to be him? And also they saw, I mean, especially in Umar's case, I think he saw, and he did not want another war with Quraysh. He saw that if Ali were to become the caliph, Quraysh, would not want it. And in fact, Quraysh almost rebelled, right? It was only Suhail. I'm going by the historical record here, the traditional record. That remember, like nearly most of the Arab tribes, they apostated after the Prophet passed away. Mecca wanted to as well. Mecca was going to, that's it. Muhammad's dead. We're free, and they didn't want. But it was one person who kept them in, Suhail, right? And if Ali had become the caliph, they probably wouldn't have followed suit as well, right? So Umar especially, Umar was very fanatical towards Quraysh, right? He was very like a pro. He wanted Quraysh, its unity and to be all together and stuff like that. So, not wanting because Quraysh were led by the Umayyads, and Umayyads, of course, would not want another Hashemite to be in charge. So anyway, the point is, it makes perfect sense if you understand all the background history that led up to it. But that wouldn't destroy your akhirah, though. Yeah, good point. And talking about it in نحن فتن فلا تكفر. But again, this is thinking about kufr as one thing, right? But destroying people's marriages and lives and these sort of things, that's pretty destructive as well. It can destroy your akhirah. It could be, but like I said, hypnosis. I mean, learning how to control people, right? I would say that's a way of destroying your akhirah, right? If you learn how to control people and manipulate them and stuff like that, whether by hypnosis or some other means. I'd say that's definitely a cause for destroying your akhirah. It says وَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Yeah, so there's this surah. Where is it? Let me bring that up. What is it? 41:7. Okay, so it says here قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَاسْتَقِيمُوا إِلَيْهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ وَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ. So it's saying, it's been inspired to me that your Lord is only one, right? One ilah, you have one ilah. فَاسْتَقِيمُوا إِلَيْهِ, so stand up for him and seek his forgiveness. And woe to the mushrikeen. What the mushrikeen here is saying, mushrikeen, where they go? Am I going the wrong way? It's 7. Oh yeah, I was going the wrong way. وَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ says الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. Right? So, it's not as clear to, you could say it's defining mushrikeen in this kind of way. They are the ones who do not give the zakat, right? They don't give zakat. And so I would look at this, if I was going to say it quickly, I would say they don't give the zakat. Why don't they don't give the zakat? Out of ibadah to others, right? So here, the previous verse is talking about those who have more than one aliha, and they are, it's telling them you have to stand up for him, right? So be upright to Allah, right, and ask forgiveness for him. And woe to the mushrikeen. So it's talking about woe to the mushrikeen, those who have more than one ilah, and they are not standing for only Allah. They are standing istaqimu to other than Allah, right? So that's why it's over here. So it's an interesting thing because they put the verse ends over here, right? So this verse وَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ is part of this verse, right? This verse which says, it talks about the multiple aliha and about, being in, standing up for him only. فَاسْتَقِيمُوا إِلَيْهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ. So they be upright or take a straight course with him. It says here, take a straight course to him. We say فَاسْتَقِيمُوا لَهُ. So stand up for him. Right, for Allah. So the mushrikeen are what? Standing up for other than Allah, and they won't give the zakat. So they won't give the zakat here. Again, so that's a kind of ibadah to those others who are telling them not to give the zakat, right? Because if they were in ibadah to Allah only, they would give the zakat. So that's what I would say. That just on a quick looking at it. But the idea here is that you can't really. It's not a very good way of defining shirk or mushrikeen here, right? This is sort of it's part of a 2 verse which are going together, and we're going to say all mushrikeen don't give zakat. So if somebody gives zakat, is he now not a mushrik? If somebody does give zakat, he's not a mushrik. It's not that. So it's talking about something where not giving the zakat is a result of it, right? Or it's just talking about those specific mushrikun, right? وَيْلٌ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ, woe to those specific mushrikeen who don't give the zakat. وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ كَافِرُونَ. And the other thing is that they are in kufr with the akhirah, right? So again, that is not as you can have people who believe in the akhirah and are still mushrikeen, right? So it's not a very persuasive set of verses for the definition of shirk, right? Saying some other stuff here, but in terms of defining shirk through those verses, I don't think it can sort of trump all these other verses where shirk is clearly mentioned with ibadah. So that's what I'd say about that. Sorry, was that covering the whole thing? All right, okay. So let's end this there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and take care. And hopefully in the next stream next week, maybe, or the week after. Take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.